All right, Jamison, as our truth seeker, yes, go ahead and select one of the three.
Envelope I chose.
Thanks. Perfect. One time, I was interrupted while I was relieving myself in a bush.
Like you were peeing in a bush?
Yeah.
When was it?
I mean, undergrad.
Where were you?
I was at school.
San Francisco?
No, I went to University of Missouri, Kansas City.
How were you, when you say, like, interrupted, it sounded like it was in quote marks, like something was weird about the interruption?
Well, it was after a party, and I had to go really badly, and the people were coming out of the party and interrupted me while I was relieving myself in the bush.
Anybody you knew?
Everybody I knew.
Oh.
And they all saw everything.
But you couldn't stop because you were in the middle of...
I had to pee really badly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what happened?
They all started laughing at me, took photos and pointed. And
Why were they laughing?
because I was naked. I was relieving myself. I had my
All right, I think I'm good.
You good? All right, great.
One time I was interrupted while I was relieving myself in a bush.
What does that mean, relieving yourself?
Peeing?
Peeing. Not pooping.
No.
No. Why were you relieving yourself in a bush?
Well, I was on my way to go sign my lease or re-sign my lease, and I had gotten stoned and drunk beforehand and was taking public transit to the location, and when I got off I got sick and
Like you threw up?
yeah, so
Because you were sick? Or you...
well, it was, you know, if you've ever been stoned and drunk at the same time.
No.
No?
I'll have to try that.
Yeah, you should. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, I just got really nauseous, and so I puked at every interval I could find. And then the last one I had to pee.
Oh. Makes sense.
Yeah.
This was in San Francisco?
No.
Where was it?
Chicago.
How long ago was this?
Probably, I think I was like 22, maybe? So 14.
So last year.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This was before or after Lilo and Stitch?
Definitely way before.
And what were you drinking?
Everything, like beer, vodka. I think there was some mix of whiskey in there somewhere. Because I was 22.
And that's what you did. Were you in school?
I was. It was just right after.
This
I
was during the
finished.
day.
No, this was nighttime.
Nighttime, you're going to sign your lease.
Yes. So it was me and my roommates were meeting at this location because the landlord has.
The landlord is meeting you at night?
Yes, at a restaurant because their family owned a restaurant. So we were meeting at the restaurant.
All right, I'm done.
You good?
Yeah.
All right.
One time I was interrupted while I was relieving myself in a bush.
Was this in San Francisco?
No.
Where was that?
Back home in
When was it?
high school. We were doing a ROTC training camp, and so me, I think there was like 30 of us. We had this whole weekend planned. Originally it was on Guam, but then we went to a neighboring island, Saipan, and just so we can get away from everything else and really be out in the elements. So first day was land navigation, and then had to set up camp. The second day we rappelled off an 80-foot cliff. Then the third day was hike up a mountain with full ruck gear and then go back down. And one of the nights I was trying to relieve myself, number 2. So you have to go off to the side far enough to, like, of course you don't want to, like, anyone to smell it. You also don't want to embarrass yourself and, like, fart, because then they don't let you let that go. So you gotta dig a hole and, of course, relieve yourself. And when I was done,
So it was in a bush or behind the bush?
it was like behind the bush.
Okay.
It was behind the bush. And then I stood up, and there was another guy there doing the same thing.
Oh.
You
So
guys
I
said
got a question.
Yeah.
So what do you mean by interrupted?
Hmm?
What do you mean by interrupted?
There was a fart that wasn't mine,
Oh.
and I was like, maybe that it's at nighttime. So it was like the jungle. So I was like, maybe it's like a wild pig or something like that.
Nice.
And then I was like, okay, maybe that's just wildlife. And then finished, I stood up, and then he stood up. I was like, was that you? Were you here the entire time? I was like, yeah.
And he was still in the middle of doing what he was doing?
No, we both stood up. We both sort of finished at the same time and stood up.
Gotcha.
And I was like, it was dark, it was at night, it was behind the bush. He was on the other side of the bush. And I was like, you were here this entire time? He said, yeah.
Okay.
You good?
Yeah.
Basically ask you, Jamison, who do you think is telling the truth?
Casey.
You think Casey is telling the truth?
Please.
Whoever is telling the truth, would you go ahead and reveal yourself? So you got it wrong.
Yep.
I was at a house party before. I completely forgot we were gonna go re-sign our lease on the bus and the train, and I got really sick about it. And once I got off walking to the restaurant to go sign the lease again, I vomited, and every bush had been fine. The last bush, I stopped, and when I went to go pee, there was a woman on the other side of the bush. I think she was smoking a cigarette because I could smell the cigarette. She was like, "Hello?" And I was like, "Nothing," like just peeing. And I was like, "Okay, cool," and scampered off. And then showed up and we signed the lease. And you know, I don't think the landlord knew because I kept my mouth shut. I just stayed quiet, and I was like, and then we signed the lease and it's fine.